Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live or listening to replay. Always appreciate the listeners. Has grown for years now, for probably like 2 or 3 years. Really excited about the listeners and everybody joining in live or throughout the years and as well in the replay. Today's episode is the 117th episode called Invisible Enemy. And once again, this is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, May 14th, 2019. So just want to thank you for listening live or tuning in the replay once again. Always excited and thankful that you all are joining us this evening or daytime, wherever you are in the world. Today's episode is going to be focused on Invisible Enemy, but definitely want to start out as we always do with some really good news. So let's go ahead and start out with a very important story that broke this past week in the news, which was talking about crypto. It was talking about major corporations such as Starbucks, Nordstrom, and Whole Foods. And so they were talking about a very prominent figure in the crypto space who runs a crypto exchange, the Winklevoss brothers, and they have a exchange called the Gemini cryptocurrency exchange. And they showed, if you all Google the Winklevoss or Starbucks, Nordstrom, and Whole Foods accepting Bitcoin, you all can see that clearly that they're accepting it. And we live in a world where right now things are being scrutinized heavily, particularly transactions and things like that, funds, monies, things like that. Very ambiguous moment right now where you don't know what direction the market is going to go. You're hearing reports of, oh, this isn't a viable market. You're hearing things of that it is a viable market. You see that it's a market, and traditional or most people don't know, well, if it is a market, it's a market. They have the saying, or some people live by the saying, I have to see it to believe it. Well, you can see it, so now it's time to believe it. And it's actually not a late window. It's like saying being in the internet or being on the internet landscape, as far as businesses being behind. Oh, if you don't have a business on the internet, you're behind. Not necessarily true, but there are some aspects to what we're talking about here when it comes to that. So you want to definitely look up that article. What else do we have here this week? We got the 4 myths. These are in the news. You can Google it. They have 4 myths. Estate planning is only for high net worth earners. There's an article that talks about this. You can Google the estate planning myths, so 4 myths. Estate planning is only about distributing assets after I'm gone. They want to get rid of that myth. And I can oversee the distribution of all. A will can oversee the distribution of all my assets. Great article still to just talk about that. A lot of people think that, they don't know, they're undecided on the will or the trust. Once I put a plan into place, I don't need to revisit it later. Definitely something that, as you all can see, a lot of times that's the problem. People don't have a plan, and then they're maybe not revisiting a plan. That's how we're going to start out with this week's episode, with the notes, or I guess you would say with news. And now we're going to talk about the invisible enemy. So if you all would like to, this is going to be kind of still class kind of based, where we talk about drawing something real quick. So you all can draw a square, or really you can draw a cross. Actually, draw a cross on your paper and create 4 panes or 4 windows. Like if you were to draw a window, you draw the cross in the middle, it'd be 4. It's a square with 4 squares in it. So inside of the 4 squares, the first window, once again, we're talking about the invisible enemy today. We're not going to talk about the most obvious. We're going to talk about the obvious today. The obvious is there's things that you know that you don't know. That's one box. That is one square. It is things that you know that you don't know. So there's things that you don't know. And then we have The next one, you can put it next to it, below it, really doesn't matter. There's no particular order that these have to go in, but they are a square to write what's going in. So the first one is things you know that you don't know. The next one is things that you don't know, but you know. See, most people don't think of that. What are things that I don't know that I know? For example, a jingle. Everybody knows. Everybody knows the slogan for McDonald's. People know the sound of the NBA playoffs. People know the sound of the NFL playoffs. People know the sound of the NHL playoffs. When you hear a sound, you know that. But how do you know that if you're not listening to it every day? It's because it's been programmed to you. It's things that you don't know that you know. It's sort of like a bad habit. You pick it up from being around somebody else that may have a bad habit. How did you get the bad habit? Somebody else shared it with you. So, and we go into the things that you actually know you know. Once again, these are the things that you know that you know. You're double confident in it. Double confident in what you know. We still haven't gotten to the invisible enemy, because clearly it's not an enemy if you know that you know it. It's not an enemy even if you don't know that you know it. Definitely not. You're going to beat the enemy. Why? Because even though you don't know, you still know it. And then we get to the last one. There are things that you don't know that you don't know. These are the super unknowns. Things that you say, when things happen, sometimes you say, oh, I never took that into account. I never thought about that. I never knew that exists. I didn't know that exists. So you're born into a society that says for profit is making big bucks, and charity is all the while ruling the country. How long is charity going to be around? Forever. Businesses come and go. Coming from an environment that private education says that's where you invest. Charity, education, hospitals, libraries, educational institutions. That's what they say in private circles. What do they say in public school? Go get an education and work for somebody else. So for sure we'll strike a chord. But the unknown that you don't know is the thing that is called private education. It's the vault. It's trustee training. Always has been, always will be. For many example purposes. Ownership incurs liability. You know this. Sole liability and sole proprietorship. So, you know that. You can research that. Why is there a thing called the private? Because there are things that, here we go. If it's knowledge that was power, everybody says knowledge is power. What makes you think somebody's giving it away for free? Anything that's free almost ain't worth having in 2019. The free air isn't clean. So what difference does it make? It's called an investment. That's it. Now, we can cross over and we can talk about the unknowns, which is there are laws that are in place that say you can't have certain pieces of financial information if you don't make a certain amount of money. So when someone comes and says, hey, the S&P's been turning over 7+% every year, 7%, it sounds good. But what happens when you have infinite returns? It's not just 100%. It's multiple percents. So people say, this private education, what is it? Two things that you will never be taught in a public school because they're private. You'll never be taught financial information, and you'll never be taught the law that governs. Why? Because family law is private, and so is contract law. Contract makes the law. So when we talk about private, there is a private. If the information is being held privately, not publicly, it shares with you what is the thought process behind what individuals either choose to do or not to do. So I'm gonna go to a chat here 1 second. Appreciate you all for tuning in live. We got a bunch of people on the chat. Big Smile, Ernest, AUIG, Cassandra. Appreciate you all. Fred, Dorian, appreciate you. Jarmaka, appreciate you. So, invisible enemy. Invisible. Oh, this is one of the words that I wanted to talk about today. Because when you come into private trustee training, one of the first sections for sure is vocabulary. Vocabulary is imperative. Why? You haven't been given the language. It's called legalese. You can look that up. It's a language. It's called legalese. It's a law dictionary that you may or may not have. So when you think we're speaking traditional terms come from traditional environments. We're talking about, why don't you know how to talk to your lawyer about a speeding ticket or something simple. It's really more of a contract language. It's like reading a Barron's law, a Barron's dictionary, a Barron's even their magazine. They have a magazine. Barron's is a financial magazine. If you read that magazine, if you're not familiar with certain financial terms, you're going to be lost. So when you talk about what you're talking about, clearly it's imperative to have a cursory overview knowledge of the words that are going to be spoken. Invisible enemy. Own nothing, control everything. Invisible enemy. Why do they have a thing called honorary degrees? I love them. What is the unknown? Is that you never owned anything in the first place. That was just a good wordplay. Just like whether me saying something's on sale or it's not. If you're buying, it's on sale. Discounted or not. So when I have people stand in front of us that say, well, why would I care about gold? It has no value. This is what they say in 2019. They say, what is the point of having gold? I can't buy anything with it. What else was stated? It has no value more than the person that's willing to buy it. That's fine. Guess what? Consensually around the world, or at least on the internet platforms that are provided right now, it is valued at a number that's in dollars, just like your gas is, just like your tires are. It has value. And he said, for somebody that sounds even better, for somebody to say that it doesn't have value, but then have someone else willing to still buy it. That's a great market to say, okay, you'll be back later. Why? And you're going to pay more. Because there's scarcity now. Oh, wow. It's not a one-on-one. The invisible enemy is not knowing that you need a mentor. Someone to walk you through the minefield. Someone that's already walked through the minefield. Someone that's ahead of you in the minefield. At least you know you're not going to get immediately blown up. The no. It was interesting doing some research recently on the family history and seeing how many families back in the day had more children with less. And to see people in 2019 that would say, hey, I'm doing better than my ancestors. Aren't you doing better than your ancestors? You're not living in a hut. I was doing some research just in 1913. A lot of communities didn't have houses. They were on farms. They were in farms.
And just doing the research, it just really shared how they were able to do, once again, a lot more with little more children, created a bigger opportunity to create an estate, to have more hands in the field for workers. For think about it, if you're running a farm, your family's running a farm, they might have multiple children to manage that farm. Whereas now, people are scared to even have one or two in society. Once again, we reported this and talked about this yesterday. If you all don't know, in 2019, yes, there are laws in China that say you can't have more than a certain number of children. So in countries that have the free ability to have children, some countries are going gangbusters still, and some countries have slowed down their birth rate. They have statistics that share with you all the birth rate and how it has declined in certain populations, particularly in large cities of the United States. Think about who lives in large cities. Large cities, once again: LA, New York, Miami, Colorado, Chicago. I should say Denver, Dallas. These are places that have large cities, and the population is not always the same as far as growth. And once again, we encourage you all to look at the statistics on that to get an idea, to see why aren't you doing more with less. So not having more hands to work the field is almost a generational problem. Looking at some of the history, I saw a lot of in-laws living with their children. Whereas nowadays, how many in-laws do you see living with their children? That's very important to see that it's almost it's definitely a depreciation, and the growth has slowed down and taking care of what's considered the elderly in home, or the elderly staying home. So you see that that's a huge area. If you all want to know a great area to generate capital in, uh, you know, senior care is booming in the States right now. Has been for years. Senior care, senior living homes, senior assisted living homes, in-home nurse practitioner cares, homes. Those things are definitely very, very popular right now. And so, really, so once again, it definitely adds more hands to the opportunity. See, the invisible enemy is not having these opportunities afforded to you by not having the children. And it's just an interesting position, ladies and gentlemen, that the society is in at this point. Uh, not knowing certain things, not implementing certain strategies. The invisible enemy is the what they say. There's always this famous quote from the Bible that I love, because so many people love quoting it, but they don't quote the whole sentence. They actually, there's a comma in the number, and but people only quote the first half of the number. I mean, the first half of the sentence, which is where the comma is. So they say there's this quote that says, "My people perish for a lack of knowledge," and that's not it. It says, "My people perish for a lack of knowledge because they reject it." They reject it. That's the bottom line. The invisible enemy is not having a student mentality towards everything. It's a complete being in love with being uncomfortable and not knowing something. It's a complete being in love with it. The invisible enemy is not loving it. The invisible enemy is thinking abrasively when you come across new information. Not having a super open mind. The invisible enemy is not knowing what you don't know. We talk about freedom, and the invisible enemy wants to let you all know that freedom isn't free. I remember the first time I heard that quote, it made me so mad. It made me so mad. It said, I'll say it again. There's a quote that was given to me at a very young age, probably 18, 19. And it was, freedom isn't free. And I said, there is no way that this is true. And then you get up every day, you go work for it. Every single day you get up and you work for time, for the weekend if you have a job. You work for the hours after you get off of work. That's what it is. You're working for the free time. Why do you work? To have free time, to have vacation time, to have family time, right? So it's backwards. The invisible enemy says work to have time. That's what the invisible enemy says. Work to have time. If you don't work, you won't have money, you will not live. That is the law. Ladies and gentlemen, what's so awesome is, let's talk about the bright side of the invisible enemy. The invisible enemy has given you the opportunity to rent out your house, if you actually have a house, to rent out your floor. If you have the internet, you have technology, you actually have the ability to allow people to couch surf, which means people can rent out and sleep on your couch and actually make money. Do we need to go there? People will do that in many parts of the world. Not everywhere, but many parts of the world. If you live somewhere or in an area or have a business in an area where people actually want to go visit, let's preface it with that. People actually have to want to come visit the place that you can rent out the floor, the couch, so someone can come through and not have to pay for hotel fees. Actually, maybe they're flying in late, whatever, city is booked. You all know about the age of Airbnb, one of the more popular ones. The invisible enemy has allowed leverage at an astronomical rate, very, very fast rate. But the invisible enemy doesn't give you the first quote unquote 12 formal years of how to execute that leverage. That leverage is not afforded there. That whole environment is not based off of that. They just got it Airbnb introduced into the society. Still not an old company, but has revolutionized how people rent, how people travel. Hotels, once again. Hotels. You all know who Blockbuster is. The audience that listens, you all know who Blockbuster is. They are out of business. You all know who Redbox is. They went online and they upped their prices. The movies aren't $1 anymore. I was like, wow, okay. I guess they couldn't compete. You can't. The dollar's losing value. So of course, when you rented them out for $1, yeah, now guess what? You got to rent them out for more. Why? There's a thing called inflation and other financial invisible enemies that you don't know about, because you may not make a certain amount of money. So very important to engage in a manner in which abundant thinking is necessary. Invisible enemy. Wow. I guess we got to talk about it. So we'll talk about it. Just doing some research recently on family history and just really did some family history. If you all want to do your family history, I really encourage it, but the invisible enemy is not knowing your family history. And that's what the vault has always been about, is being able to preserve culture. You have to be able to preserve your culture, ladies and gentlemen. If you're not, think about why you're in the position you're in. If culture was preserved, what line of people do you come from? What line of people? Do you come from rich people? How do you expect to be rich? Your last 13 ancestors, they ain't been rich. You gonna be the new one, right? You gonna be the first millionaire in your family? I was talking to associates recently about this. Is Are you gonna be that first millionaire? Like, does that really? They think about it. Most ancestors, if you look back in the past 100 years, they weren't making more than $50,000 a year. And so now you come into the fold, and you're going for millionaire status. You're going for preservation of wealth. We're talking wealth status. It's called cultural preservation. We all know it's in trust. That's why it's trustee training. That's why it's trading out the trust account. That's why hedge funds are in trust. That's why mutual funds are in trust. Everything's in trust. Why? Because you have to be in a trusting relationship. A trust is a what? Contract. The invisible enemy is not knowing your family history, because when you look back and you say, "Oh, I'm such a big shot," you can actually say, "Wow, we didn't do much. We haven't done anything." You start going back, you get back 200 years. What we got? I got back 1842. No, 1814. 1814 actually. 1814. Like, what did you guys do? I see the big events that happened in quote unquote the world. Not even the world, but you see the time frame that those things were going on. You go back and you look at how many of your family members were they farmers? We're talking about people that are in the States. So this is like very specific towards people in the States. Were your family farmers? Were your family laborers? Are you still a laborer? Would you be in a laborer class? There's classes to it. Because some people, they had a farm or they were a laborer. People who owned the farm, that's like the boss. In 2019, they don't call him the farmer anymore. They call him the boss. All right? Then we get to the laborer. Well, what do they call it in 2019? They call it a job. Who's in the field? Who's doing the technical work? Who's getting their hands dirty? Who doesn't have free time? The farmer, doesn't he sit on the porch in a rocking chair? Doesn't she sit on the porch drinking lemonade in a rocking chair? The invisible enemy is not looking up, saying, "Okay, I need a farm." That's it. All right, so then you see the benefit of what? Having children. Why? Because if you have a farm, you're going to need some hands. Then you see, oh wow, no wonder they have big families. So how do we get 200 years later or 100 years later, you're working like the laborer, 9 to 5. Then we're talking traditionally, because I fall into the millennial category. I like to target the millennials, but we have a huge demographic of individuals that listen to this, so always appreciative of all of you all. But a lot of millennials, a lot of younger people, they don't have children. They don't want children. They like, when you go look at what is classified as a millennial, these are statistics across the board. I mean, when you guys say, well, what statistics matter, Trust Christian? Thomson and Reuters. Why does Thomson and Reuters matters? It says, listen, ladies and gentlemen, this is not Trust Christian. Own nothing, control everything. This is the information and data that you get pulled off of your cell phone through an invisible enemy. We'll leave that one alone. Thomson and Reuters says the African American race in the United States spent $1 trillion last year. And they break it down into categories. They break it down into clothes. They break it down into food. They break it down into education. They break it down into many different categories. And they do this for whoever checks the box that they're black or African American. So now when you wonder, how does that pay off? How does it pay off from checking off the box of your race? Well, if you culturally identify with the race, then you check the box off. And then once you check the box off, there are people that buy that data. Okay, so they buy that data. Now we see that they spent $1 trillion. Let's look at land ownership though in that race. We're not even gonna go there. I will never tell you all. The vote will never tell you the statistics on land ownership for a race that spent $1 trillion, which is, I mean, that's huge when you're talking capital, and that's in a year, in a 365-day year. Spend a ton of capital. And the swing in how money is spent, how money is invested, as you all can see. That's why we do episodes on spending versus investing. It's clearly they have a ton of capital. There's a ton of investment going through them, actually. So, Invisible Enemy says you don't know that you don't know that they spent $1 trillion last year. And we can go to other races, but I mean, we like talking about number ones over here. So they were number one in spending last year. They've been that for years, more than 4 to 5. So spending power is huge in the States. But look at that. Go. I challenge you all to go purchase Thomson and Reuters. I'll do my best to find a one that we really like here. But Thomson and Reuters has always been really good for statistics and things like that. Um, you all can go look. We'll do our best to bring that out in the episode, or get on the email list. Go to welcometothevault.com and check us out. Get on the email list, and we can just, if there's enough requests, we'll send it out. The actual statistic place, because there's a statistic. We actually did an episode about that a long time ago. Know for sure. So statistically, definitely put out those statistics. Talk about those statistics. Those are very valuable pieces of information as people check off those boxes and things of that nature. And seeing the actual economic power that is being displayed, share numbers, and see how it's going through. And then when we talk about how you have $1 trillion going through your hand, they're not even 50 million strong in the country. The African American race definitely not even 50 million strong, and they're generating in a country where there's 300 million. Nah, that's some strong economic power in the world. I would definitely love to see just sheer numbers for a group of people in one country. They definitely are a pretty big country, quote unquote. They should own the country, right? But yeah, when you all look at the numbers, the invisible hand is not knowing what to do with that $1 trillion. That's what the invisible hand is. The invisible hand says, you all don't know who J.D. Rockefeller is, but J.D. Rockefeller is an individual that had over 5,000 businesses in trust before he died. Over 5,000. That's what you know when you're in a private environment. You know that. So when you all say, well, give me an example of something that's really powerful. The Chinese Medical Board. How do you start the Chinese Medical Board and you're an American? So, how do you start the Board of Education? Same person that did the Chinese Medical Board did the Board of Education. I mean, think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Whoever has the larger bank wins, so if someone gives the larger endowment, larger contribution, they're going to have a little bit more power, right? So, the invisible hand is not knowing what to do with it. I could easily, I just had a great idea of talking about that trillion being invested into the schools, the HBCUs, to create better higher education, to give the children the education that they need to get into higher education, to create, to utilize math and arithmetic, to be a part of the technological revolution that's going on in front of your eyes. To be a part of that. That's how you protect the next generation. They have to go all in with education. But guess what? When you all go look at the statistics for that group of people on higher education, that's actually one of the lower categories. Buying books and education, very, very low for that group. It's actually less than 12% of their spending. And it's actually lower than that. Just being nice, being friendly, wanting to give them some type of love. So these positions are interesting to see. Overall, Invisible Enemy 2019, or you see the where does your family come from? If you can look back 200 years, won't it be easier for you to look forward 200 years? How easy is it to look forward and see, like, wow, okay, I only really had about 4 ancestors and one line, and they all went back about 200 years. That's not long. So 4 people. So if I can think out, how do I want my great great grandchildren to live? To not have to be a laborer? Are your great great grandchildren going to be laborers? Are they going to be working for someone else's family? A job? Being stuck in traffic? People say, "Oh, I want to make my life better for my children than it was for me." So what did you do? Put them in traffic? They're sitting in traffic like you. They're getting 2 weeks in a paycheck. They're in debt like you. You're right. It sounds like they're like you. That's good. They sound like you. They didn't deviate off the path. But you said you want something better for your children. I guess you'll give it to them when you pass away, right? When you give them their insurance policy that you never taught them how to manage and be prepared to manage, so then they get a big parachute amount of money, or it comes out over a period of time. And they still don't know how to manage it. They have to have institutional trustees help them manage it. So you're looking now 4 generations from now. What do you see? The invisible enemy says, focus on the day, get it right now, head down in your cell phone, Instagram. Isn't that what it says? Focus on you right now, focus on you, because it's all about you. Focus on you. You see how you just keep hearing it in the society? You want to know why they call it the iPhone? So it can focus on you. But it's about the last name. Always has been, always will be. That's why you're in trust. That's why people come to the vault. That's why people deal with the vault. That's why people listen to the vault. They care about their last name and say, okay, you know what, I really want something better for the next generation. I know I gotta make sure that they're left with some tools. Tools, keyword tools. Come on now, you using a hammer for a wrench's job? You using a hammer for everything? Just hammering away. You right. You working hard, pounding and pounding and laboring and laboring. You get in the car every 2 weeks, do the same thing. Like, dang, man, maybe sometime in between I could take some time to figure it out. Yup, you could. But then guess what? I was looking into the ancestors and I said, okay, why didn't they come up? They was working, but why didn't they come up? Is it culturally they were entertained? Even when they got off work, what did they do? Now I understand that opportunities are afforded differently per culture. But if they weren't entertained, are you? Because that is United States #1 selling domestic product is entertainment. And once again, I love how we can keep going back to this group because they're awesome. The black group spends the most money on entertainment. 200 years later, just because of the research that I was doing recently, 200 years later, this group overall is more entertained than they've ever been. I mean, if you all think about entertainment and the categories of entertainment, it is amazing. And they're the largest consumers of it. The invisible enemy entertain me. Entertain. And you have so many people say, oh, Christian, I love the language. I love the language, the invisible language that, people don't talk about, the roots of the words and things of that nature. People come up with words all the time now, but there's a spirit behind the word. There's a meaning behind the word. There's an intent behind the word. You know the difference between a chair and a light for a reason. So, you know how it goes. Entertainment. To entrap the mind. People definitely, they trapped. And we can just use colloquial terms, such as being in a trap. So, different word out there right now. The invisible enemy is not knowing that you don't know. That you could be the farmer. And you can have as many kids as you want. Because you got a farm for them to actually work on. So what does that look like in 2019? So many people are just going to defer to the internet business. Oh, wow, I could just get on the internet, do something on my cell phone, yada, yada, yada. Most people aren't even thinking about going and getting hard money lending. They're not going to get lending. They're not going to go out and really go out and duplicate, leverage. Oh, here we go. The invisible enemy is called compound interest. If you're giving from one generation to the next, by the time we get to the fourth, they're not going to look the same. They're not going to live like you. They might be driving around in a Rolls Royce. They might have to have Gucci, slippers on when they get in the car. It's earned from somebody else's effort. So, very encouraged to think like this. The invisible enemy is, you're going to have some kids, but you're not prepared. And preparation is the call and the work of daily work. The habits. The things that will make or break us. The habits. It's an invisible enemy. We're going to end it on this right here, because the invisible enemy is you. It's not being able to self-assess and course correct and seek out individuals that are better than us. Why? Better meaning they have more experience, so they have more dust under their feet. And what is it that we're talking about? Legacy building, generational wealth building. People say, I'm gonna pass it along. How? You don't even have a legacy vehicle. A Rolls Royce is a legacy vehicle. Would you agree? You got a Honda, they're not saving it as an antique or a classic, but they're saving a Rolls Royce every time they come out as an antique or a classic. It's not losing half its value as soon as it leaves the lot. It actually holds its value and goes up. That's legacy. So, passing along something. What's the vehicle you have? A LLC? A C Corp? A will? We talked about at the beginning of the show the four myths. The four myths is one of them, you gotta have money to go do an estate plan. Why would you be thinking about an estate when you're thinking about today and right now? Why would you be thinking about an estate? Estate is long term, right? Long term thinking. That's the sound of a successful person. Someone that thinks long term. They don't let the short term rattle them. It doesn't shake them. It doesn't shake them. They say we live in a generation of emotionally weak people. They say we live in a generation of sensitive people. Specifically in the States. You hear the older generation, that's what they try to say on the news and all of those other podcasts and stuff. Oh, people are weak. Really? The invisible enemy is yourself. It's your emotions. They say it's business, not personal. Then there's no emotions involved. It's business. One of the business partners always says you can't have your emotions tied up in business. Okay, so that's the invisible enemy. It's your emotions. If you have emotions in it, it's invisible enemy. And then you get people that come onto the vault. Here we go. Let's talk about this. People come onto the vault, the live chat. They'll ask a question, and Trust Christian might respond. And then it's, oh, don't yell at me. Don't yell at you? My mom, being vulnerable here, my mom yelled in her speech, let alone yelled when she was yelling. And then when you go and talk to Russian people, because I have Russian friends, and they're loud. And then you talk to Cuban friends, and then some of them are loud. And it's like, oh, okay, so this isn't, like, you're not yelling at me, you're just talking loud. Oh, okay. You're just a loud talker. Maybe you're in an insulated environment. Don't yell at me. So, invisible enemy is the emotions. It's not just being able to accept the facts for the facts, looking at the numbers for the numbers. I'll end on this one. If we have any questions, feel free to type into the chat. I'm going to tell you what the invisible enemy is for sure. It's not looking at the numbers every day. Are you keeping score of your bank account or the bank account that you're, the assets under management every single day? I can share with you why you're not and why you are. The reason why you're not looking at the numbers is because you're grossed out by the gross, and then it gets to the net, and then you're like, that's the little bit that I caught in my little fisherman's net is the net, and that looks ugly. So people don't want to see it every day. They rather look at themselves from the makeup that they can buy. They rather look at themselves from the haircut that they can get. They don't want to get out and keep earning that. It's to be comfortable. Long-term thinking. The people that look at the account every day, hey, harsh reality. It's either the brokest you're going to see yourself, brokest you're going to see the account, or you say, you know what, this is just the beginning. It's just the beginning. So you look at it with a different perspective. It's just the beginning. Now I can look at the account every day. It's just the beginning. It's the beginning of going up. We got to look at, all right, what do we got to do for the next day to go up? Going backwards is not good. So sometimes if you think you're staying the same, hey, you're still managing it. Quality position to be in. Looking at the account every day. Why would you look at the account every day? Who did you see look at the account every day? Who did you see look at the account every day? Do you look at the account every day and still have a feeling associated with it? It's like, oh, right. Feelings. Oh. Oh man. It's just crazy, right? You could tell it's like a person that, let's just I'll give you an example of it's an ugly example. You're sitting at dinner and everybody has, someone's going to pay the bill, but everybody pays their bill individually because, that's how certain groups roll. And someone, they don't know where their account is, but they go to their cell phone, they look at their cell phone, and then they open up the account and they see that the account is not where it needs to be for the bill, and you see the look on their face because there's blue light on their face from their cell phone, and it's like, oh shh. You're like, oh shh. And then they look around slowly, like up and around, look back down, and then look back up, and then try to just hold it down for a while. Such an interesting look. You would have known that you had it or not had it if you're looking at the account, because purchases look different when you know what's in the account. It stops you from BSing. Recently, that habit has been instituted because now when you go out, you don't need to look at how much something costs. You already know it's in the bank. That's the invisible enemy. There's no feelings attached to it. Oh, I'll buy it. Why? Because the account has it. Why? I already know it's in the account. It can afford this. That's money management. That's risk management. That's asset under management. It's not managed by most people. And people say, why are you working? You're working to have more free time so you can buy things. Sounds like need more money. Got to be able to manage it. More assets under management. No questions. Appreciate you all for tuning in live. Fred. There's some wild names on there right now. I'm so sorry I ain't gonna get y'all names tonight, but I appreciate you for tuning in live or listening to the replay. King Kong. If y'all want to get in contact with Trust Christian, it's christian@trustchristian.com. christian@trustchristian.com or welcometothevault.com. The invisible enemy is not putting in the study time, and just putting in the study time is very, very important. That's like asking you how many can you put in too much study time. You can't put in too much study time when you're the best at what you're doing. Promise you. You can't put in too much study time when you're the best at what you're doing. It just will never happen. You put in the study time, the results will show because you're gonna start becoming the knowledge. The knowledge becomes you. What they say, you become the living word. It's words on paper. That's the theory. I got a buddy said, "What's the point of reading a book when you trading? I might as well just trade." See, I'm not gonna talk about this friend because they might be listening. We appreciate you, but hey, if you don't want to read any books on the subject matter, go ahead. But guess what? I actually do know about gasoline that goes into the car. You all know there's a difference between 83, 93, diesel, all these things. It's good to know what is gas made of going in your car if you have a car. And then if it's something that's going to generate you wealth, don't you think it's imperative to know it? And have, okay, one of the senior indirect mentors said, he said, read every book on the subject matter that you're living. I said, ooh, that's a good one. So if you're in a specific space, reading all the books on that is imperative. Successful people, obviously. Appreciate you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. So many invisible enemies. But we all ultimately can go back to the 4 window panes. Let's go over them again. Things you know that you don't know. Things that's the one. The second one is things that you don't know that you know. That's a slippery one too. But then we go over to the things that you know you know. Ooh, how exciting. I know. I know you know. That's why you know. And now you're going to know that you don't know things at times. How? How did I not know? Because you don't know that you don't know. That's the education that we got in private. Those 4 window panes, and we would take information and we would plug it into those 4 window panes. What do you know? Okay, you already know those things. What about the things that you don't know? What about the things that you know that what about the things that you don't know that you know? What about those? Talk about some of those things, and we would talk about those things. And then we would go into what about the things that you know you don't know? Let's talk about those things. But then when we got to that one box where it was always you don't know what you don't know, this is truly diving deep into an invisible enemy. This is where you find out how creative you are. This is how things have been invented. That someone's able to think about things that haven't been thought about. Appreciate you all for tuning in live. Listen to the replay. Trust Christian, Know Nothing, Control Everything. Trustee Training is going on right now. We will start up another course possibly in August. And because it's a 12-week course. And then we have Cornell's workshop coming up with trading out of the trust account in any market. We're talking stocks, we're talking forex, talking oil, talking any market, because well, you understand that if the banks are in control, the banks are in every market, then clearly you want to be a part of the banking family, banking society. Aren't you dealing with money? Yeah, then you're dealing with banking. And so practicing private family banking or practicing banking is very, very important. There's banking laws. You all are going to be very, very familiar with those, because it's not about necessarily you opening up a bank or anything of that nature. It's more of a thought process. And you all are practicing certain thought processes right now. And so it's very imperative to figure out if that's something you want to continue going on, and or making different decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, we always encourage estate planners. Estate planners will tell you all about that. They'll tell you all about that unless you don't ask them. So we always create a dialogue to at least start a conversation with those so-called legal professionals that you all may engage with, because we know a lot of times a lot of people, they still rely on those sources, and that's great. We just recommend that you build a team of them, not just even one. You definitely, this is family business now, and so family might have multiple people for multiple reasons. So appreciate you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. It went really long with this episode. I was really excited about that, because definitely want to talk about the invisible enemies today. And we just encourage you to really focus on not just focusing on living your best life now, but also being able to prepare for the next generation, thinking about the next generation, putting in the work for the next generation, and generations to come. The air is real, the world is real, And yes, there's going to be a second and third generation from you if you intend on having it, and putting them in an incredible position by having a proper vehicle is very, very important. So appreciate you all for checking us out. Thanks, Joseph Samuel. Thanks, Queen Hope. Appreciate you all. Talk to you all soon. Peace and blessings.